we as women, especially as Black women, have to stop being so okay with just getting the job or just saying that you worked somewhere. It's like you're so much more than that. Your experience is so much more than that. Ask for what you want. If you don't ask, it can't happen.
Welcome to the Game of Her Own podcast, your go-to place for empowering behind-the-scenes stories of trailblazing women who work in the sports and event industry. I'm your host, Jahaan Blake, and I'm honored to bring you this free resource where you'll hear firsthand accounts of how these incredible women got their seat at the table. And I will personally share strategies to help develop your leadership skills in this industry. We've got a lot to explore together. I am so glad you're here. All right, Game of Her Own listeners, let's do this. Saria Parker, the founder of Sportsimist. I'm so excited you're here. Welcome to the Game of Her Own podcast.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Of course. Okay, we have a lot to talk about. I can't wait to get into it. First things first, though, tell us what's one piece of advice you wish you had received earlier in your career?
One piece of advice would definitely be to celebrate myself more. I think that as a woman in sports, you get so caught up in accomplishing the next goal. I look back and there's a lot of things that I've done at an early age, and I can't say that I've taken the time to celebrate them in that moment. So
I talk about it all the time, celebrating your wins. And like, I have to remind myself, right?
yeah.
Like, I'm just like, wait, did you even you did a lot. Like, for example, I just talked to, I keep plugging this and it's not on purpose, guys, but I just did a workshop with the Miami Marlins, right? The women of the Miami Marlins. And like, I was sitting back, yeah, thank you. I was sitting back and I'm like, you just because I just was moving so quickly, right? January, like didn't even think about it in December. It was booked before that.
Right.
Didn't think about December, sat down in January, pulled everything together, was working on it. You know how it goes, right? Rehearsing, doing the thing. Then I was done and was just like, okay, I have 2 podcasts tomorrow. I got to get ready for this. And then by like Friday, I was like, wait, it's the Miami Marlins. Like you've been in it when you're in sports, you sometimes forget how big it is. Like how
Yeah.
oh, someone told me that and like a client told me that, I'd be like, that's incredible. But I don't do it for myself. So I'm trying for January to write down my wins like I talk to everybody else about. Like I'm practicing what I preach. And so it helps. How do you celebrate yours? Like, what do you do now? I know you wish you did it past, but what do you do now? Or what are you trying to do?
So whatever I am doing, I have to say that this is because I'm celebrating myself. So whether that's like taking myself to a spontaneous lunch that's a little bit more expensive than I would normally do, or shopping, like this is celebrating this. Just doing little things like that, I think it makes me feel like, okay, that accomplishment, it's good. Like I took time to sit in it. I celebrated myself for it. So it's nothing specific, but it's just making sure I'm saying I'm celebrating something after I do it.
I like that. Just I'm gonna go out to expensive lunch this, you know what I mean? And have a little glass of wine with lunch. I'm just throwing that in there. Or like dinner or purchase something.
Yeah.
Or it doesn't have to be big, it can be, but it can be little too. It makes those things feel a lot better as well.
Yes.
Talk about founding Sportsimist and what that was like. I have so many questions about it. So let me try to be a good host and ask one question at a time. So talk about getting into that and what led to it.
I wish that I had like a sexy story, but I don't. It was at a time where I knew that I wanted to start a business, but I didn't know what I wanted it to be. And I was working in fashion merchandising at Fanatics. I was a buyer for our hard goods division, buying for MLB, NHL, NBA, NCAA, and NFL. And while I felt kind of fulfilled at that job, I knew that I wanted more, and I knew that I wanted something that was my own, and it was somewhat fashion related. So I had this idea of starting something, and I was going to name it after myself, to be honest with you.
Nothing wrong with that.
But I was like, no one knows me. Like, what, what are you doing? Whatever. And so when I started kind of writing down the different lines, Sportsimist was one of them. And it came up because it was sports and feminist combined. And as I sat with it, which I always do, I like to sit with my thoughts a lot. I was just like, no, that's the name of the brand. Like that's what it is. And that's kind of how Sportsmist came about.
I think that's a sexy story. Like you want, I mean, like let's break it down. You want to start your own business. Hey, there's a lot of people who say they want to do it and don't do it.
Yeah.
right? And like they talk and talk and talk and talk. I mean, I did it for like 15 years. I talked about it and never did it until now. But like you did it. It doesn't seem like that was a long window. Like I love how you sit with your thoughts, and I think that's really important. You did it, and now you've created a brand that I believe like one day we're all going to be sitting around. There's going to be some announcement that we see online that says like how you were bought out by some company, or
Oh, for
and you're
sure.
still, yeah, like there's going to be something like that, right? Like, or how Sarah, I think it's Sarah Blakely, the founder of Spanx. I
Yes,
might have emailed you about that. I was like,
you did.
and she like, yeah, she like gave all her employees like an X amount of dollars, which is it was a huge amount. And I was like, oh, that's gonna be Saria one day. Like you have something great here. So in the beginning, did you feel like you had something great, or were you? Oh, she's shaking her head. No, y'all go ahead.
No, I didn't feel like I had something great. I feel like it started off as kind of a passion project, I could say. And as the time went on, I started getting more and more followers. People started reaching out to me more, just seeing the support with the merchandise. And I felt at that point that that was just my responsibility to keep going and kind of keep giving back to women in sports as a community. And now I can see it as an empire for sure, and something that I hopefully sell one day. And hopefully I am giving my employees $10,000 vacations. But I definitely see it as so much more now.
What kept you going, right? So in the beginning, when you weren't like, oh, I have something special here, like what grounded you? What kept you moving, or what inspired you, I should say?
Honestly, what inspired me was things that I was going through at work in sports for myself, but also, I have girlfriends that work in the sports industry and they would share different things. And I don't remember exactly when I started doing like the Dear Women in Sports quotes, but really it was based off of true stories and based off of different things that my friends would tell me in sports. And it would really just provide me with that inspiration to kind of keep going. And even when I did have moments where I would step away, which I've had a ton of, being honest, because it hasn't been easy, I would always receive like a DM or something that would say like, I look forward to your posts like every day, or I look forward to this, or I love this so much, or my daughter loves this so much, or just different things like that right when I needed it. And okay, I'm going to take you on a little story time. So
Yes, I love story time.
specifically, last summer, I was actually about to just like stop Sportsimist in general, but I had two different messages that people sent me. And when I tell you I wasn't posting anything, I wasn't speaking to my audience anymore, but I received one message and it was a picture of someone with my denim jacket on, and they were on a plane. Just to see someone wearing it on a plane, that was, super motivational. And then someone else texted me and said, hey, I'm on this girls' trip with my friends, and someone pulled out your sweater and was like, oh my gosh, this is my favorite sweatshirt ever. And I was just like, okay, these are little signs to keep, to not give this up. Definitely turning points for me, but definitely why I still keep going.
See, this is why I like you. Like you're honest, you're open, like like you almost stopped doing this.
Yeah.
And that is like wild to me. I remember you disappeared for like a month, and I was like, you good? Like, where are you at? Like, because I know how hard it is, and I know like you get the
Yeah.
wrong messages from people sometimes, right? If you're not getting the messages that you received. But like I'm always like, I hope no one's bullying her. My husband's like, what? I was like, I don't know. I just want to see where she is. She hasn't been online in a month, and it's weird. Like I want her to come back. No, I love that story, and I love that you're so open about it. What was it that made you say, I think I'm done?
So at that time, I was actually transitioning in my career in general. This was between me going from the NBA to NASCAR. And I just wasn't sure if I was supposed to be in sports anymore. I was unemployed for like 2 months. During those 2 months, a lot of just, negativity, your mind, all of that was kind of getting in it for me. And so that's where I was just like, should I even be doing this at all? Do I even mean what I say? Like, am I being
Mm.
authentic? You know what I mean? You start to kind of question yourself. And that's what made me kind of want to just stop completely.
And those two photos and or two messages kind of pulled you out of
Yes.
that low place that you were in. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, for sure.
Talk about these lines that you have, like all these different, I don't know if they're called lines, but well, what's the right technical term? Because I'm clearly not in retail, but like you have all these, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
different, what's the word?
Different collections.
There it is, collections. Y'all, I'm cool. I swear I'm cool. All right, so talk about these collections and like what inspires them. And then I really do want you to talk about, there's one that I was like, ooh, she's not messing around. It was women in sports don't owe you shit.
Yeah. So I'm inspired by just day to day, like I was saying, in terms of talking with my girlfriends and different things that would come up, or even different things that would happen to me. I would have men say certain things, and it's just like you can't really say anything back in the moment, or you have to kind of keep it professional. But when I clock into Sportsimist, I can say whatever I want. So that's kind of where, those collections come from. The same thing with our Juneteenth collection that we have. I am a Black woman who works in sports to inspire other Black women to work in sports. It's really monumental because it's true. I, at that time, was working at Fanatics where I was the only Black woman in my department, like in my area on my level. And it wasn't an easy time, but just kind of pouring into Sportsimist and coming up with that to say that resonated with so many other people.
Yeah, that one was a good one. I was like, oh, yeah, yeah. Because 20 years ago, when I started working in sports, I think there was one, two, maybe three Black women where I worked. Typically, one was in HR, right? Like that's what you always see. And so I don't want to say it was frustrating, but it was more, it was just like, ugh. It just didn't, I don't know. You're just like, well, where is everybody? Where are you guys? Like, should I be somewhere else? Like, what are we all doing?
Yeah. And it's
Yeah.
hard too, when you don't have someone that looks like you, sometimes it's hard to show up as your authentic self every day. It's like, are we not getting hired for a reason? Are we not here for a reason? I mean, obviously there shouldn't be, but you start to have those thoughts, like what is going on here?
Okay, one more question about the collections. So the women in sports don't owe you shit. Is there like a story behind that one, or is it just kind of like a mood you were in because someone had you feeling some type of way?
Someone had me feeling some type of way. I had a experience with a colleague, former colleague, where he was just asking me questions that you're not going to ask a man. And I'm just like, why are you so entitled to ask me these questions? Like, it's because I'm a woman, it's because I'm a woman in sports. And so, it was frustration, but it turned into a collection that everyone loves and everyone purchased a ton of. And, I released that probably in my beginning stages of Sportsimist and still to this day. So many people, tag the mugs or purchase the mugs.
Yeah, it's been a minute since I bought something. I think that's on my list. Yeah, there's a few women, some who I love, but I would send that mug or a shirt to them. It's a battle. It's just not the men. I
Yeah.
think it is. I mean, they are a culprit, but it is a battle, I think, for us, for sure. You're doing Sportsness, but then that's not your full-time only job. Like, how
No.
did you balance that while you were at Fanatics or NBA, both of which I would like to talk about?
And also I just graduated with my master's.
Oh, child. Yeah, that's a lot.
That
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you. But that's what I'm talking about in terms of taking a moment to celebrate yourself. Like I would just be like, what's next? What's next? Worked for Fanatics, what's next? Worked for the NBA, what's next? It's like, no, sit in this. You're only 26. Like, what's going on here?
What did you get your master's in? Tell everybody.
It's a master's of human relations. I got it from the University of Oklahoma. I started that program when I was at the NBA, and I just finished last month. So
A lot of people, and we'll eventually get back to the question I asked, but what I don't even remember, but a lot of women want to know if they need to get their master's in sports. Like it's always like a question I receive from, people who are just starting out or people who are in the manager level and think that's what they need to get ahead. What's your opinion on that?
I would definitely say no. I think it's to each its own. So me specifically, I went back to school because I didn't do that well in undergrad. I was already in sports. I had this amazing career, but it was important for me to show myself that I could go back to school. I could be responsible. I could get good grades. I finished with a 4.0. It was something that I just wanted to do for myself. So that's why I went back. And I know everyone doesn't have that story or, everyone thinks that you need a sports management master's, but not necessarily. I do think that there are other ways that you can show that you want to grow in the sports field. There's so many, digital courses and different things that you can put on your resume that I feel like are still super impactful. And I feel like just telling your story while you're networking. I have found that my story and being transparent has gotten me indoors that degrees aren't going to get me indoors.
Mhm.
So I would definitely say it's not a necessity, but everyone's different.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. I always tell people, I was like, it's so personal.
Yeah.
And it just depends on so many things. I don't think any one person can answer that question for you.
Yep.
Talk about your journey to your like first working in sports. So I still like am blown away that you're 26.
Oh, I'm not 26 now. I'm speaking to past
Oh.
Saria. I'm not 20. I'm not 26 anymore.
Still, I mean, like you started Sportsimist in your 20s,
Yes.
correct? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, all that is impressive. And starting it at any age is impressive. I think when you start something when you're younger, a lot of people are just like want to go buy the book. And maybe that's me being old school, right? But like a lot of people are just like, I just need to get a job. I just need to do all these things and check these boxes and put a roof over your head
Yeah.
and so it's risky when you branch out and do other stuff. And so kudos to you. So tell me, was Fanatics your first job in sports?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Talk about how like that came to be.
So honestly, I didn't really have a desire to work in sports. It's actually kind of ironic because I played college basketball for a year and I've been around sports my whole life, but I just never thought of it as a career path. My undergrad was fashion merchandising, so I wanted to be this fashion industry queen and all of this other stuff. But one day I was browsing on LinkedIn and I saw a role at Fanatics, which was in the area I was living in, Jacksonville, Florida. And I saw a role that was transferable that I knew that like if I got my foot into that door, I could transition to the fashion merchandising section of Fanatics, which I did. And I messaged my former boss on LinkedIn. That's kind of how things started, which I will always preach. Like the power of LinkedIn is so important, but being authentic behind those messages is really important as well, because I let her know, hey, my background is primarily in fashion merchandising, but I have these transferable skills. Like, can we chat about this role? And she said, yeah. And I got hired like a week later.
You know, I think at any age or any stage in your career is a better way to say it. Any stage in your career, it can be intimidating to reach out to the hiring manager or whoever when you apply for a job.
Yeah.
And like we tell ourselves so many different things like, oh, they're busy. Oh, this is cheating. Oh, they're going to be mad if I reach out because so many people are reaching out. Did you have any of those limiting beliefs when you went to LinkedIn?
No, I was just shooting my shot. 100% of the shots you don't take. I know we all have that. We hear that quote all the time, but it's true. The worst thing she could say was no. And if she would have said no, then it just wouldn't have been my door. It just wouldn't have been what was for me.
Yeah, she could have said no, or she could have said no, but still hired you because she didn't have time in her
Yeah.
day at that point, like to talk to you.
Yeah.
You always wonder. I wonder if you could ask her how many people reached out on LinkedIn, right? Because I'm always curious how many people do,
Right.
because I think so many people are intimidated to
Yeah.
do it and have actually have the conversation, right?
Yeah.
And talk to somebody because there's so much uncertainty there.
Yeah.
I have people who reach out to me like, can we chat? Or I have questions and they email me in LinkedIn. And I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, here, let's just talk live. Let's just make it quick, 20 minutes. I will give you free advice. I stand by that. I always do it. And some people don't move forward. Even when I'm like, this is free, check the box that says no for coaching. I don't know what happens, but people freeze up and it's a big deal. It's just so easy. And how was that conversation for you? Like you had a conversation with her before you were hired?
It was, yeah, right before the interview. And then, she kind of skipped. And that's the thing. Like, you have to think of the recruiter and the hiring manager as people too, because they're people first. So I talked to her first, and then I talked to the recruiter, and then she like completely interviewed me. And that's not like the normal set, the normal ways that things go. But she's a person, wanted to hear, where I was coming from. And then I moved forward after that.
How long were you at Fanatics?
I was there for 3 years, a little over 3 years.
Were you able to make that jump to the role that you really wanted? And how did you advocate for yourself to do that?
Yeah, so I worked in my foot in the door role for 6 months, and then I made the jump to the fashion merchandising role. I advocated for myself by working really hard in that foot in the door role. Like I made sure all the directors knew who I was, everyone higher up that I dealt with, I made sure they knew who I was. I made sure the person at the security desk knew who I was, just, really making a name for myself. So when I did, have those desires to transition over, I also let my boss know too, after we started talking about like career development. And she was my biggest advocate for going after where I really wanted to be in the company, which I also think is important to say. But after I made that jump, I have so much respect for Fanatics, and I absolutely love them as a company because you are able to kind of move around and there's so much opportunity. There's so many different areas, but it was advocating for myself from my very first day and just setting myself apart from anyone else.
6 months in,
Yeah.
that's a big deal. And then I always talk to people, you have to create allies at work. You have to brand yourself. It doesn't need to be fancy. You don't need to, you just have to let people know what you do and what you want so they can talk about you when you're not in rooms that you're not in rooms that they're in. And
Yep.
it sounds like you did that from day one. You weren't afraid to tell people what you wanted at all.
Yes.
Did anyone tell you just be patient, or did anyone tell you to stay in your lane, which I've heard in my career?
I wouldn't say particularly in that role, anyone told me to stay in my lane. I have had roles after that where people have said that. Like my lane is my lane. And I think that I've always had that fire in myself in terms of going after it for what I want. Like there isn't anything or any goal that I have set for myself or will set for myself that I feel like I'm not able to accomplish. So when anyone does say that, that's just noise to me. That's just extra chatter because no one can see where you're going but you, or no one has that vision but you. So I've just always kind of kept that in mind as I've navigated things, on my own terms in sports.
Hey, Game of Thrones listeners, Jahaan popping in here. Do you ever feel overlooked at work or perhaps unsure how to advocate for yourself? You are not alone. And it's exactly why I've created a free training called Empower Your Career, Mastering the Art of Self-Advocacy for Promotion and Raises. In this training, I will teach you tactics like how to have meaningful interactions with your leadership team, how to increase your confidence, and there's so much more. You'll walk away with the tools to confidently seize control of your career growth. So, what do you think? Are you ready to stop being overlooked and start being noticed? If you are, the link to sign up is in the show notes. Let's elevate your career together. All right, let's get back to the episode. Let's talk about NBA. So now you get this job with the NBA because you're a badass. Now you talked about like the negotiating side of it. I know you do coaching as well, and you talk a lot about negotiating. Talk all about it. Because I remember seeing it and being like, oh, I want to ask like a ton of questions just because I want to know like what you did and how you negotiated to get what you want. Because you negotiated, correct me if I'm wrong, for a remote position, correct? Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, and you're in Jacksonville and the NBA headquarters is in New York City, correct?
Yeah.
All right. Spill the beans. Let's talk about it.
So here's the thing. When it comes to negotiation, the reason that I like Fanatics is so key and working hard at Fanatics is so key. And I was involved in so many different areas of the business at Fanatics. Like I did as much as I could. So when I got to the NBA and I had those interviews, the way that I was able to speak to myself and speak to different things that I've done in the past was really easy. And I always tell my students this, you have to make the interviewer essentially fall in love with you, because when it does come down to the negotiation process, they're going to want you. They're going to do what they can to get you. And to be honest with you, the NBA got to the end of the process and they offered me the job, but they wanted me to move up there. And I turned the job down. And the next day, the recruiter called me back and said, we will offer you remote. So it's like, you have to have in mind what you want. And you have to be able to say no to things that you don't want. We were speaking about this before I got on the call, but I don't like being cold. So the New York is just not going to work for me. And I know that about myself. So, when they offered the role and it was, you have to move up here, I was just like, well, I don't think it's the role for me if I have to move up here. So that's when they came back with the remote.
Did you try to negotiate to make it remote? Like, did you throw that option out to them, or did they come back and say, all right, here's what we're going to do?
Yeah, I negotiated to make it remote, and she said it's a hybrid role, 3 days in the office a week. And then I said, well, I appreciate it, but I'm gonna have to decline.
You didn't count yourself out when
Yeah.
you saw that it was a remote position. You still applied.
Mhm.
And did they ask you that sneaky question like, will you relocate?
Well, here's the thing though. Since I have experience in HR, I have seen firsthand, I've had it come across my desk. Like there's the job requirements and then there's like the real job requirements. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? It's like the job requirements that are posted, it's kind of just ballpark with where organizations, what they want. But the real requirements, if you're a great candidate, that's gonna overshadow, whatever those things are that don't really mean so much anymore once they speak with you, once they know who you are, once they fall in love with you. And I don't let those deter me. If anything, COVID has taught us that any role can be remote unless you are on the team side. But to be honest with you, I actually spoke with someone the other day that's on the team side and she's remote. So I don't know anymore.
Yes. Yeah, it's so true. Like it's just a starting point. You nailed it. And then Janet Marie Smith, who was a guest a while ago, said the same thing. Like she just was like, it wasn't an issue. Because I said, you live in Baltimore full time, but you worked for the Red Sox and then you worked for the Dodgers. Weren't you concerned about not like applying or in her level, I don't know that you apply, but right, like going after these roles? And she goes, is it not an issue? And she said
And
that so matter of, I was like, okay, let's move on.
so one of my friends, I just helped her negotiate her salary recently, and her company that she just accepted a role at is based in New York. She does not live in New York, but they fly her up there every other week right now to get the job done. And it's not always going to be this way, but sports organizations especially, like they will do what they have to do if you're the person that they want. I think that we as women, especially as Black women, have to stop being so okay with just getting the job or just saying that you worked somewhere. It's like you're so much more than that. Your experience is so much more than that. Ask for what you want. If you don't ask, it can't happen.
Yeah. And if they say no, which will happen, that's okay. It's not the right place for you. Like you said for MBA. Well, all right. Well,
Yep.
then I guess this isn't the right role for me. And then you walked away and they chased you.
Mhm.
I mean, what a lesson. Like it's just, I don't want to say it's that easy, but it can be that easy. Just go for it and it's okay. Like I liked your post about like my algorithm knows that I like you because I'm always seeing your post and you're very, well followed. But you said something about don't apply, stop applying for every job that you see. And those are not your exact words. But I agree. Like, but however, on the flip side, if you see a role that might be a manager role and you're a director level and you think you might be able to talk them into it, give it a try. Like if you see the opportunity, like go for it. Now, if you're just applying for everything and not putting any strategy behind it, which I'm imagining was your point, right? Don't do that. But
Yeah.
if you see a role, I have a friend that he just did that. He was like, I mean, he's not manager level, but you just don't know.
You don't know, and everything's negotiable.
Yeah, everything is. And think about, I don't know about you, but I've seen, working for, three different teams. I've watched postings go up, and then I've watched the person get introduced with a higher title than
Yeah.
what the posting was. So those things happen because people just give it a shot.
Yeah.
That's it. And we're talking women. I'm not talking about men. I've always been focused on women's career journeys. You just have to speak up. You just have to
Yeah.
ask for what you want, to your point.
Yep. And as far as it as title negotiation goes, sometimes the organization thinks that they need a certain thing until they start talking to people and they start interviewing and they start seeing,
Mhm.
like who has the actual background and what it is actually going to take to adhere to the job description. And then that's also something else you can keep in mind.
Yeah. You have your master's and you have so much experience and like you're seeing it all and you're trying it all, which I love. Like you're just kind of going after it. I love that you will pause sometimes and just take a minute. I'm just going to figure it out and that's okay. Like if you were listening and you're applying for jobs regardless of your level and you're like, I can't take this anymore. It is okay to pause. It's okay to pause. It's okay to say, you know what, I'm going to do something that I'm in control of. I'm going to be a, Uber driver and hopefully pick up people who don't like to talk and just to be in the zone for a minute, and just do whatever you got to do to take that time for you to figure out what you truly want. Because it sounds like for you, that's what you've been doing your entire career and it's working for you.
Yeah, For sure. And Saria today isn't the same Saria I was 6 years ago when I started. You're going to change. What you want is going to change as time goes on. So you have to take that time to pause and reflect and think, okay, what do I really want at this point in my life? What do I really want at this point in my career? It's so important to have those like really check-ins with yourself. And then that's how you can kind of make the moves moving forward.
You keep evolving. It's funny when people talk about retirement, which I am much closer to retirement than you, but like, where are you going to live? I don't know. Like, I don't know what city, like this city, that St. Simon's Island where I am, like, seems like a lovely place. But I don't know if that's what I'm going to be in the mood for when I'm
Right.
pushing 70. Like, you're going to be a totally different person.
Mhm.
I want to have the money to do what I want to do in retirement. Who knows? My family is all, everyone, the Blakes are moving to Portugal. So who knows? That's where I might go too. But my point is just, you keep evolving, things keep changing, and that's okay too. I mean, it's better that way, I think. I like it better.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's next for Sportsimist? You're doing events all over the country. You have a coaching program. You have all these incredible collections. What's next for you?
Honestly, just to keep evolving, I'm at a point where I want to just really like own into the different things that I've already created and kind of not perfect them, but in a sense, kind of perfect them. And right now, the focus is the career coaching. And I feel really passionate being able to just use my expertise and things I've learned along the way to give back. And that's my little passion right now. So everything else is still going on, but the focus right now is the career side of things.
There's so many options. And I was thinking about this a couple of weeks ago. I was like, remember when we started in 2020? There are
Yeah.
so many more options for women in sports. And there were some options before, right? Like something like Wise has been around for a
Yeah.
very long time. But I'm just seeing all these different women pop up who have incredible experience in different areas. And I was like, all right, there's more of us now. I was like, I'm not mad about it. Like, you can view it as competition, or you can view it as like, there are so many options that people can find the right fit for them. Right.
Yes.
Like that to me is incredible for us. And I love that for us. And I love that coaching is now, I remember when you announced it, and that coaching is now part of your, let's call it offerings, right? Like, and that's incredible. So people can learn from your experience and you have something valuable to offer. So congratulations on that. Final sprint, 5 questions. What's a goal you achieved that you weren't sure you could reach it?
Honestly, it's what we talked about a little bit earlier in terms of continuing on with Sportsimist. I didn't think it was something I would be able to sustain with having such a busy life outside of it. But I can say I'm doing a good job now.
Good. What's your go-to pump-up song?
So this is a worship song for my Bible girlies, but it's called Trust in God, by Elevation Worship, and it really gets me going.
Oh, all right. We're gonna link to it in the show notes. Although nowadays people can find it before I even finish talking. What's your favorite way to unwind after a busy day?
So I just started this thing where I like light a candle in the bathroom. Like turn my lights on, light a candle, and just like soak in the bath.
That's yeah. No phone or phone.
No phone.
There we go. Yeah. It's just like a moment. Yeah, everyone needs whatever that thing is. What's one thing that always makes you laugh out loud?
I would say I'm a cornball. And I feel like when I'm scrolling on social media at night, the funniest like Instagram reels will come up. So I feel like it's not anything specific, but I'll just be in bed like cracking up, laughing at reels.
Oh my God, we need to start sending each other some because I'm the same way. And my husband does, he goes, huh. And I'm like, man, and like I save, like I like pick out the like best one. I'm like, oh, this is the one I'm sending him tonight. And he'll just kind of laugh and be like, that's funny. I'm like, what? I'm in tears over here. Like, did you see that dog slipping on ice? That's funny. Nope. Yeah, he's not the one. All right. So, oh, last one. Name one woman in sports who inspires you and tell us why.
So I don't want to sound cocky saying this, but I inspire myself. I feel like, as a Black woman in sports, it's a lot to deal with, and I've been through a lot. And the passion from Sportsmith also comes from a lot of pain. So the fact that I'm able to kind of just, take a pause and keep going, that is inspirational to me.
Yeah, I don't think you sound cocky at all. You are not the first person to say that, and I hope you are not the last. If you cannot inspire yourself, well, one, how you inspire others, but two, how are you going to like show up for
Yes.
yourself? Like you have to be able to show up for yourself and you have to believe in yourself. And it sounds like you do.
Yes.
Yes. All right. How can women in sports or any industry, we have listeners from all industries, how can they get in touch with you?
So you can message me on LinkedIn, Saria Parker. Send me a message, make sure it's authentic, like we spoke about earlier. Or reach out to me on Sportsimist. I'm online a lot, so just send me a DM.
Okay, so on Instagram is Sportsimist. Is Sportsimist on LinkedIn or is it just
It's
you on
on
LinkedIn?
it's on LinkedIn, but reach out to me at Saria Parker on LinkedIn. That's my personal.
Okay. Saria, this was so fun and so long overdue. I'm glad we finally got this scheduled. Thank you.
You too. This was great. Thank you so much.
Ladies, now it's your turn. I want you to go take some action on things that you heard today. A lot of us have been captivated by Saria's journey, witnessing this extraordinary empire she's building. I'm telling you guys, we are watching it happen. She's building it. The strides she's made over the past 3 years, phenomenal. And there's a wealth of wisdom in her story, but there's one lesson that stands out, and it's a lesson that we don't always spotlight. It's the power of taking a break. For those of us with ambition coursing through our veins, like Saria, like myself, the notion of pausing it can seem almost paradoxical. It is as if the world is telling all of us we need to slow down to speed up. When we look into Saria's wins with Sportsimist, it is clear that her bravery to hit pause was a pivotal move. Taking a break can do this for your career. It can rejuvenate your creativity, sharpen your focus, and ultimately propel you forward with renewed energy and clarity. When we are constantly in the thick of things, it's easy to get lost in the day-to-day grind, losing sight of the bigger picture. A pause, a step back allows us to reassess our past, realign our goals, and come back stronger. So here's my challenge to you. Consider where in your life or career you might be overdue for a break. It doesn't have to be like this sabbatical. You don't have to take 10 days off. You don't have to take months off. It could be as simple as a day dedicated to you. It could be simple as a week dedicated to you where you disconnect from everything work. Can't do it for a week. Can you do it for a day? What matters is you need to give yourself permission to rest, reflect, and to recharge. Remember, it's not about working harder, but smarter. And sometimes the smartest move you can make is to take a moment for yourself to ensure that when you return to your mission, job, whatever we want to call it, you're doing so with a clear vision and a lighter heart. So I am urging you, my friends, to see the value in rest and hit pause when needed, just like Saria did. It's not a sign of weakness, it's a strategy for sustainable success. As always, thank you for sharing your time with me today. Your presence is always a gift. I want to ask you one favor. Will you share this episode with another incredible woman in your life? Let's spread the word that it's okay to take a break, that it's essential for our growth and success. Until next week, my friends, remember, it's your turn to go out and continue to take action.